Hey guys, Paul here with Intrepid Camp Gear. Today we're installing a 200-watt solar panel from Lensun on our Geo 2.5 rooftop tent. So this is going to be attached to my 2017 Toyota Tacoma, and it's mounted to a Go Fast Camper platform topper. So why solar? So having a solar panel allows me to fully recharge my house battery without ever having to tie it to the truck's alternator or needing shore power. Our house battery powers a Dometic fridge, lights in the camper, outlets to recharge phones, cameras, things like that, and we also have an inverter. With 200 watts of solar, we can basically run indefinitely. The battery never fully drains. It gets just a little bit of power from the sun, and we're good to go. All right, so first step is gathering all your supplies and materials. So to start, we have our 200-watt solar panel from Lensun Solar. I really like using flexible solar panels because they're a lot easier to attach, which we'll go over in a little bit. Lensun Solar has really high quality solar panels and all of their supplies. So for the other materials, we have painter's tape. We'll use this to mock up where we're attaching the solar panel to the tent. We have 3M VHB tape, which stands for very high bond. This is how we'll attach the solar panel to the tent. We have our extension cables, which allows us to run the wires from where we mount the solar panel to where it is connected to our charge controller. We have some PVC cord covers. This is what we'll use to hide the cables as we run them down the tent. We have some rubbing alcohol. This is just used to clean the tent before we attach the solar panel. A knife or box cutter. That's what we'll use to cut the cord covers. Wire cutters, so obviously to cut the wires. Wire strippers, this allows us to strip it before we attach our connectors. And then our crimpers, which allows us to crimp the MC4 connectors, which is basically the quick attach connectors to attach the solar panel cables together. And then lastly, we have our MC4 connectors. These are our connectors that allows you to quickly connect and disconnect everything. All of that came from Lensun Solar. Some additional supplies we'll use today are some heat shrink butt connectors and heat shrink tubing. This is we use to attach the extension cables to the cables that are attached to the solar panel, crimpers to crimp the heat shrink butt connectors, and lastly, either a lighter or a heat gun. So next step is laying out the solar panel. So I lifted it up on the truck with the tent closed. I measured to get it kind of roughly where I want it on the truck. And I'm going to use some painter's tape just to mark the corners. And that allows me to know exactly where I'm going to put it when I have the VHB tape on the solar panel. So now I'm going to remove the solar panel since we marked where it's going to go. I'm going to clean the bottom of the solar panel, clean the top of the tent, and prep the VHB tape to put this thing on. Okay, so now I'm going to use the rubbing alcohol and I'm going to clean the whole perimeter of where the solar panel was before. That way I have a very clean surface for the VHB tape to attach to. Going to clean around the edges just like we did on the tent. The back of the solar panel is clean. I'm now going to use the 3M VHB tape all around the edges, and this is what's going to be the adhesive that holds the solar panel to the tent. So now that the VHB tape is fully around the perimeter of the solar panel, I'm going to slowly peel off the red part. This is the transfer tape. So now the back side of the double-sided tape is exposed. We are now ready to lift and put this into position on the truck. All right, I'm now going to put the solar panel into position using the blue painter's tape that we put on before as my guide of where to place it. So solar panel is in position using the tape as the guide. I'm now just going to go around the solar panel and just provide some light but firm force, making sure that that tape is fully attached. I'm now going to remove the painter's tape. So now I'm going to cut the zip ties that were just holding the wires together and start laying out how the wires will run down the front of the tent underneath to where it passes through to the truck. All right, so now I'm going to cut off the end of the MC4 connectors. This is to attach the extensions. So I'm just going to use the Lensun wire cutters and just cut off the ends. So now I'm going to lay out the wire molding. This we're going to also attach with the 3M VHB tape. And I'm going to lay this out to mark the length I want. I'm going to start just past the positive side connector, and I'm going to stop right before the end of the tent and just use my fingers or a marker to kind of mark where I'm going to cut. I'm going to use some scissors or a razor blade or a knife and cut the wire molding where I was marking it with my hands. Now I'm using that same 3M VHB tape that we used to attach the solar panel. I'm laying it out on our wire molding, and that's how we're going to attach that. I'm going to run the wires through the wire molding before I attach it down. So I'm going to do that with both the positive and the negative. So I got the wires fed through, kind of mocking it up of where I want it, and then I'm going to flip it over and remove the red transfer tape. I'm going to stick this in position. So the wires are coming out. They're going to then run down the front of the tent. So I'm just going to apply some nice firm pressure to attach the wire molding. So now I'm going to attach the extension cables. I have a positive and a negative. So to do that, I'm going to use the automatic Lensun wire strippers. So to do that, I just insert it into the end of the automatic wire stripper until there's maybe a little more than a 1/4 inch or so exposed, and then squeeze, and it does the rest for you. After that, I'm going to insert the heat shrink butt connector, and then I'm going to use our crimpers to crimp it down. I'm now going to do the same thing with the end of the extension. I'm going to now insert that into that same butt connector on the other side. Going to use the crimper again, just like we did before. So now I'm going to use the lighter, or if you have a heat gun, that works too, and just hold consistent heat over the butt connector, and this will make it so that it melts on the end, so you have a nice firm waterproof connection. I'm going to slide down the heat shrink tubing that I previously put in place and use heat again to shrink this. I've now shrunk down the heat shrink tubing. I'm now going to repeat all of the same steps for the negative. So I have the wires that we just connected with the extensions running down the front of the tent. I'm now going to mock up the wire cover that I'm going to use for this part. So to do that, I'm going to pull these cords back enough to leave a little bit of slack. Given that there's a hinge here, I want to make sure that there's slack so these don't get pulled too tight when the tent opens. And I'm now going to lay out the wire cover again, just to mark how much I need to cut it and kind of get a rough idea of where I want it, and then I'll take it down to cut it. So I ran our extension cables through the new piece of wire molding, leaving a little bit of slack. I'm now going to use the VHB tape on the bottom to attach it along the front part of the tent. We're going to pop the tent open and make sure there's enough slack here in the middle part where there's the forward hinge, just to make sure the wires don't get caught. Up here you can see that we have just enough slack. So you want it to be nice and snug going over that hinge with a little bit of slack where it's not too tight. I'm going to also do the same thing here. I'm going to figure out how much slack I need underneath while making sure that it's not too tight over this front corner. Just like we did up top, we're now going to use the wire molding and measure how much we need here on the bottom of the tent. I'm going to line up with the edge of the tent track. And just like we did for the upper hinge, for the lower hinge, I want to make sure there's enough slack so that it's not pulled too tight when the tent is open. So from this point, it really depends on where you're running the solar panel cables to. For me, I'm running the cables down through the roof of my camper to where my charge controller is. We're now looking at the top of the camper. This is where the pass-through is. This allows the wires to run from up top where the solar panel is down below to where the charge controller is. You can see here there's MC4 connectors on both sides. That gives me a quick disconnect. That way if I ever remove the tent and I want to run the solar panel just on top of the camper, I can quickly switch between the two. I'm going to figure out exactly how much slack I need to connect, and I will use the Lensun wire cutters to cut off the end. So the only remaining step is to crimp on connectors for the end, plug it into the wires we've already run through the roof of the camper, and we're ready to power this up. So to connect the MC4 connectors, it's super simple. Use the Lensun wire strippers to strip off about 1/4 inch, give it a good squeeze. Take our Lensun crimpers. I will insert the end into the middle setting for 4 millimeters. I will put the wires into the crimping tool and give it a good squeeze. You can see it's now fully in there. Now to attach the connector, all I need to do is slide it in until I hear a click, and then screw down the end. And there we go. Positive side is good. All that remains is the negative. So this now plugs right into the other side that's coming through the roof until you hear a nice click. Do that for both the positive and the negative. We'll tuck that in there and we're done. So the solar panel is fully installed on the truck and fully wired. So what you do from this point on is really dependent on your setup, whether you have a full house battery setup like I do, or if you have a portable power station. So the simplest all-in-one solution is if you're using a portable power station. If so, the cables from the end of your solar panel will plug directly in to your power station. If you're using a full house battery setup like me, it'll look a little bit more something like this, where your solar panel cables go directly to a charge controller. Now you can plug it in directly to your charge controller, but I like having the option of removing the camper from the truck. So for that, I have an Anderson disconnect plug wired in that allows me to fully disconnect it if I want to take the camper off the truck. And I also have a breaker, which again, that's completely optional, but that allows me to disconnect the solar panel if needed. But at the end of the day, the solar panel is making its way to a charge controller, and that is what is taking the power from the sun and feeding that to the battery to fully top it off. One nice feature of the Victron smart controller is it's Bluetooth, so I can see it on my phone. So even though it's an incredibly cloudy and gloomy day and the sun's about to set, I can see that I'm getting 21 watts of solar power out of the 200 watts from the panel. So if this was in pure sun, it would be getting much closer to 200, but the fact that I can read anything allows me to say that all of our wiring is fully good to go and working as intended. And that's a wrap on the solar panel install. Everything is working great. I want to thank Lensun Solar for providing the solar panel and all of the wiring accessories. If you guys have any questions or comments, please let us know down in the comments, and we'll see you next time.